The rain hammered against the mansion's windows as three women stood in a circle around something that should never have happened. Their silk dresses, once pristine from the gala, were now splattered with evidence of a choice that would bind them forever. In that moment, with sirens wailing in the distance, Elena, Sophia, and Maya made a pact that would either save them all or destroy everything they'd built. What they didn't know was that secrets have a way of clawing their way back to the surface. And 20 years later, a single photograph would threaten to unravel the lie they'd lived every day since. The Ashford Foundation's annual charity gala glittered with the kind of wealth that made uncomfortable people comfortable with excess. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across. Women in couture gowns and men in tuxedos that cost more than most people's cars. Elena Morrison stood near the champagne fountain, her emerald dress catching every eye in the room. At 42, she'd built a media empire from nothing. And tonight she was being honored as Philanthropist of the Year. The irony wasn't lost on her dot across the ballroom. Sophia Chen adjusted her ruby necklace and smiled at a senator whose name she'd already forgotten. As one of the country's top criminal defense attorneys, Sophia had perfected the art of appearing engaged while her mind worked 3 steps ahead. She caught Elena's eye and raised her glass subtly. 20 years of friendship, 20 years of trust, 20 years of carrying the weight of that night. Maya Rodriguez emerged from the powder room, her silver gown shimmering as she navigated through clusters of conversation. A celebrated trauma surgeon, she'd spent the day saving lives at the hospital before rushing here. Her hands, steady enough to repair a torn aorta, trembled slightly as she accepted a glass of wine. The anniversary always made her nervous. 20 years ago tonight, everything changed. The 3 women gravitated toward each other as they always did at these events, forming their own island in a sea of strangers. To everyone else, they were 3 successful women who'd been friends since college. No one questioned it. No one looked deeper. That was the beauty of success. It provided the perfect camouflage. To another year, Elena murmured, barely audible over the string quartet. To another year, Sophia and Maya echoed, their glasses meeting in a quiet toast that meant so much more than anyone around them could know. But across the room, someone was watching them with unusual intensity. A young woman with a camera and a press badge, her dark eyes fixed on the trio with an expression that made Maya's stomach drop. The woman raised her phone, snapped a photo, and disappeared into the crowd. Did you see that? Maya whispered urgently before either could respond. The lights dimmed for Elena's speech. But none of them were thinking about awards anymore. After 20 years of silence, had someone finally started asking questions? The next morning arrived too quickly. Elena sat in her corner office overlooking Manhattan, the city sprawling beneath her like a kingdom she'd conquered. Her assistant had already brought her morning espresso and the usual stack of newspapers and tablets loaded with news feeds. She was halfway through the financial section when her phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. Check your email now. The message waiting in her inbox made her blood run cold. It was from an address she didn't recognize. anonymous.truth.seeker@protonmail.com. The subject line read, 20 years is a long time to keep a secret. Attached was a photograph, not from last night's gala, but from 20 years ago. 3 younger versions of themselves, barely recognizable, standing in a garden at night, their faces pale with shock, clothing disheveled. Elena had thought every copy of this photo had been destroyed. Her office phone rang. Sophia calling from her car. Tell me you got it too. I'm looking at it right now. How is this possible? We burned everything. Obviously not everything. Sophia's voice had the sharp edge it got in court when a witness surprised her. I'm calling Maya now. We need to meet today. 3 hours later, they sat in Maya's home office, the photograph displayed on her laptop screen between them. Maya's twins were at school, her husband at work. The house felt too quiet, too exposed. There were only 4 people who knew what happened that night, Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. The 3 of us, and don't say his name, Sophia cut her off. Not here. Not ever. Maya leaned forward, studying the photograph. This wasn't taken by any of us. Look at the angle. Someone else was there. Someone we didn't see. The implications hung in the air like smoke. For 20 years, they'd believed they'd been alone. They'd built entire lives on that assumption. Maya had married, had children. Elena had become a public figure. Sophia defended people in courtrooms under oath. All of it rested on the foundation of a single night where they thought no one else had witnessed what they'd done. There's more, Sophia said, pulling out her phone. I got a second email an hour ago. It says, truth has a price. I'll be in touch about payment. We're being blackmailed. Elena stood and paced to the window. We can't pay. Payment never ends. It just proves we have something to hide. We do have something to hide, Maya said quietly. We've been hiding it for 2 decades. Then maybe, Sophia said, her attorney's mind already working through scenarios. It's time we stopped running from that night and figured out who else was in that garden. Because whoever took this photo has been sitting on it for 20 years. The question is, why surface now? 20 years earlier, they'd been so young, so certain that the world would bend to their dreams. Elena was a journalism student with fire in her eyes. Sophia was already debating her way through pre-law, and Maya had just been accepted to medical school. They were invincible, or so they thought, the night of Marcus Ashford's summer party. The air had been thick with jasmine and possibility. Marcus was their professor, wealthy, charismatic, 20 years their senior. He'd taken a special interest in all 3 of them, offering mentorship, connections, opportunities. They felt chosen, special. They didn't see the trap closing around them. The party had been sophisticated, adult, intoxicating. Wine flowed freely. Marcus kept their glasses full, his attention moving between them like a spotlight. When he'd suggested they take a walk in his private garden to discuss their futures, they followed eagerly. That's when everything shifted. The conversation turned strange, his hands too familiar, his words taking on an edge. When Elena tried to leave, he'd grabbed her wrist. When Sophia protested, he'd laughed a cold sound that revealed something ugly beneath his charming facade. And when Maya stepped forward to intervene, he'd shoved her hard enough that she'd stumbled into the fountain. What happened next unfolded in a blur of adrenaline and terror. Marcus lunged at Sophia, his mask completely dropped, and Elena grabbed the first thing she could reach, a stone statue from the garden's edge. The sound it made connecting with his skull would echo in her nightmares forever. He'd fallen so suddenly, so completely. They'd stood there, 3 young women in summer dresses, staring at their professor's body lying motionless in the garden. Maya had checked his pulse with shaking hands. He's alive. But we need to call no. Sophia's voice had been firm even then. Think about what this looks like. 3 students, a professor alone in his garden. He's connected to everyone. We're nobody. Who do you think they'll believe? They'd made their decision in that garden under the stars, with the sound of party music drifting from the house. They'd cleaned up the scene, walked back inside, made excuses, and left separately. Marcus Ashford was found the next morning by his housekeeper, allegedly the victim of a fall in his garden. He'd survived with a severe concussion and memory loss. The investigation went nowhere. The 3 of them never spoke of it again, but they never drifted apart either. That night had fused them together with bonds stronger than friendship, darker than loyalty. Now, sitting in Maya's living room, they finally spoke the truth aloud. Someone was watching us, Elena said. Someone saw everything and stayed silent for 20 years. Why? The blackmailer's instructions came 48 hours later. Meet at Riverside Park. Midnight, come alone, but all three of them. The irony of the specific demand told them everything. Whoever this was knew they moved as a unit. Had always moved as a unit. They arrived separately, but converged at the designated bench overlooking the Hudson River. The city lights reflected off the water like scattered diamonds. Maya saw her first, a woman in her 40s, standing by the railing. As she turned, recognition hit like a physical blow. Claire Ashford, Sophia breathed. Marcus Ashford's daughter, who would have been just 16 the night of the party. She looked like her father, the same sharp features, the same calculating eyes. But where his had held cruelty, hers held something else. Pain, understanding. You remember me, Claire said, walking toward them. Good. I was afraid you'd forgotten all the people orbiting your secret. What do you want? Elena asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Claire pulled out her phone, displaying the photograph. I took this from my bedroom window that overlooked the garden. I saw everything that night. I saw what my father tried to do to you, and I saw what you did to stop him. Silence stretched between them, heavy with implications. I was 16 years old, watching my father reveal himself as a monster. For 20 years, I've carried that image, not of you hurting him, but of him attacking you first. Of him being the predator my mother refused to see, that everyone refused to see because he was charming, successful Marcus Ashford. Then why blackmail us? Maya asked, tears streaming down her face. Why now? Because 2 months ago my father died, and in his papers I found something. Claire pulled out a folder. Lists, names, dozens of women dating back 30 years. Notes about their vulnerabilities, their ambitions, what he could offer them. You three were just the ones who fought back. She handed them the folder. Inside were documents that painted a picture of systematic predation. A man who'd used his position to manipulate and abuse for decades. I don't want money, Claire continued. I want you to help me expose him. The real him. But to do that, you have to tell the truth about that night. All of it. Your story is the one where he didn't win, where his victims found the courage to stop him. But it means stepping into the light and accepting the consequences. Elena looked at Sophia and Maya. 20 years of running, of hiding, of building lives on a foundation of secrets. And now a chance at truth, at finally unburdening themselves, but at what cost? We need to think, Sophia started. No, Elena interrupted. We've been thinking for 20 years. It's time we stopped protecting ourselves and started protecting all the women who came before us and might come after. We tell our story. Maya nodded, then Sophia. 3 women, 1 secret, finally ready to speak. 3 weeks later, their story went public not as criminals, but as survivors who defended themselves against a predator. The backlash was inevitable, but so was the support. Women began coming forward, adding their voices to the chorus, validating what Claire had discovered in her father's papers. Elena, Sophia, and Maya faced legal scrutiny, public judgment, and personal costs. But they faced it together, no longer hiding behind perfect lives built on a foundation of silence. The secret that had bound them in fear became the truth that set them free. Your turn. Have you ever witnessed injustice and stayed silent? What secrets weigh heavy on your conscience? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to know that truth. No matter how delayed, is always worth pursuing. Remember, survivors of violence are never the villains of their own stories. Subscribe for more stories about courage, consequence, and the complicated truth of survival.